For the soul of every living thing and the breath of all humanity rests in the hand of the one who shaped desert and heart alike. The scorching Arizona sun trembled above the asphalt like a furious mirage, its glare stretching across the lonely stretch outside Scottsdale, where life and death often barter in silence. On that blistering noon, when heat waves danced like phantom spirits and the wild brush whispered unsolved prayers, a courier's van rumbled to a wary stop, the driver just. Another wandering witness in the kingdom of survival stepped out, expecting the grim routine of clearing roadkill. Yet what lay before him was no ordinary tragedy. It was Luna, a bobcat whose golden coat, matted with dust and dried blood, still shimmered with the stubborn luster of the untamed. Her ribs jutted like the ridges of a sun-scorched mesa. Her paws, flayed raw by relentless flight, wept quietly onto the gravel. She did not growl. She did not flee. She simply fixed the driver with eyes deeper than any canyon, eyes alight with a resignation that felt like a prayer gone unanswered. In that moment, the fragile thread between animal rescue and emotional true story tightened. When the wildlife emergency team arrived, faces shaded by brims, hands trembling behind sturdy gloves, the desert itself seemed to hold its breath. They circled her not as conquerors but as mourners, each heartbeat sounding like a drum in an ancient ritual of human and animal connection. One touch was all it took. Luna's trembling flank revealed milk damp as tears, the biological confession that somewhere in the furnace of that wild expanse, newborn bellies still cried for her. Time fractured, radios crackled. The stretcher felt like a funeral bier. Yet, within the scent of blood and burnt sagebrush, a quieter truth whispered, "This isn't just survival. It's a miracle still unfolding." And as the rescue van roared toward town, carrying both life and unanswered loss, the desert wind chased after them with a howl that sounded eerily like a mother calling her young. In the van's cabin, the driver dared not exhale, for he understood he was no longer a courier of parcels, but a reluctant courier of grief. Swept into a viral YouTube story, none would soon forget a chapter where wild bond and dramatic wildlife. Rescue entwined beneath the ruthless summer sun. Blessed are those who mourn, for in their tears the seeds of compassion bloom, binding creature to creature, heart to untamed heart. Inside the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, sterile lights flickered like uncertain stars while Luna lay upon the metal table, a desert constellation, whose lines had been redrawn by pain. Dr. Hayes, with eyes sharpened by decades of survival, triage yet softened by reverence, traced the map of her wounds, gashes that told of predator's claw, bruises that told of cruel impact, and paw pads ground raw by miles of agonized sprinting across molten tar and jagged stone. Around them, the staff moved with choreographed urgency. 4 lines slid into trembling veins. Antiseptic kissed torn flesh, whispered prayers floated like motes of dust. Yet no salve could reach the deepest hemorrhage, the absence of her cubs. Luna breathed, but her spirit seemed to hover somewhere beyond the fluorescent hum, lingering in a twilight place where mothers search endless deserts of memory for the ones they cannot reach. No hiss crossed her cracked lips. No snarl rattled her bone-thin chest. Instead, she pressed her head to the cool enclosure wall, as though stone might echo with the phantom suckle of kittens now claimed by silence. Volunteers returned to the roadside armed with binoculars, thermal drones, and a hope so fragile it bent in the heat. They combed each arroyo, each shadowed coyote trail, seeking the tiny paw prints of a touching animal story that refused to surrender to dust. All they found were loops of dried blood, a scattered plume of fur, and tracks swallowed by the indifferent sand. Back at the center, night fell. Luna remained curled, a question mark carved from grief, while a sound, soft as a prayer rug's fringe, seeped into the halls, a rasping croon, neither growl nor purr, but a mother's lament. Staff called it the wild grief. It threaded through vents and dreams alike, reminding every listener that love is not confined to human tongues. In those hours, each medic, each volunteer, each janitor felt the same raw edge, that unseen cubs weighed on their chests heavier than any scalpel or syringe. They spoke little, save sharing the same dread. Was this heroic mission already a eulogy? The verses of nature offered no neat answer. But beneath sterile walls and heart monitors, the animal miracle of unwavering maternal instinct continued to pulse, begging humanity to keep pace with the courage of a creature who had run herself to breaking rather than abandon her young, the righteous care for the life of their beast. In that compassion they discover the hidden chambers of their own souls. Dawn's first blush poured through skylights, gilding Luna's inert form with molten gold. In another wing, an incubator glowed softly, cradling 4 Labrador puppies, orphaned by human neglect, tiny lanterns of need whose cries pierced the pre-dawn hush like shattered glass. Volunteers, eyes rimmed red from overnight vigils, fed them with droppers and gentle hums of lullabies. Yet milk only filled their bellies. It did not replace the rhythmic thunder of a mother's heartbeat. Then, in a moment that felt less like decision and more like divine momentum, Dr. Hayes ordered a fragile experiment of heart-warming animal video proportion. Bring the puppies to Luna. Some called it madness, canid and felid, bound by ancient predator, prey scripts, but grief, he argued, speaks a language older than fear. The enclosure door sighed open. Luna did not stir. The smallest puppy, its eyes still milky with newness, was placed upon a blanket a safe distance away. A minute hung eternal. Then Luna's ear twitched, her nostrils flared. A rumble, softer. And dawn breeze slid from her throat, not warning but wonder. Slowly, as if rising through quicksand, she lifted her head. The puppy squeaked, seeking warmth, stumbling toward the only heartbeat it sensed. With a shudder that rippled through every onlooker, Luna inched forward. Her tongue, once crusted copper with her own blood, flicked out, cleaning the tiny muzzle with surgical tenderness. Tears ignited across the glass observation wall. One by one, the other puppies were introduced, and something extraordinary unfurled. Where death had seemed inevitable, life demanded an encore. Luna allowed them to nurse, her cracked mammary glands offering sustenance reborn as salvation. The pups latched with fervor, and with each gulp, her eyes regained sparks of feral starlight. Staff wept openly, phones quivering as they documented a viral YouTube story beyond the most scripted redemption arcs. The hashtags practically wrote themselves. Hashtag animal rescue, hashtag emotional true story, hashtag wild bond, hashtag animal miracle, hashtag dramatic wilderfuss. Yet the true miracle was unhashtagged. A bobcat's grief alchemized into guardianship, bridging species lines the way sunrise bridges night and day. Days passed. Puppies grew, Luna's wounds knit, and viewers around the globe, Pakistan to Peru, USA to UAE, experienced a collective gasp of restored faith. For in that quiet room flooded by puppy yips and soft purr like chirrups, survival was no longer a biological imperative. It was a shared covenant between flesh and spirit, beast and being. And when at last Luna lifted her gaze to the human watchers, eyes no longer hollow but gleaming with purpose, everyone understood the unspoken verdict. Humanity had answered the call. The desert mother, once resigned to vanish like heat haze, now strode into legend, carrying not her own cubs but hope itself, proof that compassion is the most potent predator of despair. The screen fades, hearts quake, and somewhere a new viewer clicks replay, ready to let the wild change their heart forever. He heals the broken-hearted and binds up their wounds, even when their fur is torn, even when their grief howls louder than words. The orphaned Labrador puppies cried not from sickness, but from the hollow space where a mother should have been. Their tiny bodies curled into blankets, their paws twitching, their whimpers floating like fog through the sterile hallway of the rescue center. It wasn't hunger alone that made them cry, it was absence. An absence so vast that it rattled their fragile ribs and seeped into the bones of the staff who listened, helpless. Every feeding offered sustenance, but not presence. Formula couldn't mimic fur. Rubber bottles couldn't mimic heartbeat. They weren't starving for calories, they were starving for a mother. The volunteers tried everything: warm towels, slow rocking, heartbeat simulation pads. Still, the air between feedings stayed heavy, saturated with unanswered need. And the heartbreaking truth whispered behind every moment was this: not all puppies survived long without more than food. They needed skin, sound, touch, love in 2 rooms, separated by species, fate, and sorrow. 2 forms of grief bloomed like wildflowers out of season. One was old grief, feral and unspeakable. One was newborn grief, raw and instinctive. Luna, the wild bobcat, curled in a corner, refusing water, refusing food, refusing the world. The puppies, blind and trembling, reached for something they'd never known but already missed. Each existed at the edge of survival. Each cried out into the dark for someone who wasn't coming. But as the nights passed, something strange began to happen. Luna would begin her nighttime calls, soft, low, haunting, a mother's mourning not made for cages. And from the far end of the hall, the puppies would respond. Their cries would rise into the silence like music born of longing, as if some invisible thread stitched their hearts together through stone walls and species lines. No one orchestrated this duet. It came from instinct and absence, from lungs too small to understand loss but too sacred to stop feeling it. It had been nearly a week. Luna hadn't moved from her corner. Each sunrise felt like a new farewell. But in the quiet hallways of this sanctuary-turned chapel, 2 aching souls, wild mother and orphaned young, were about to find each other. And nothing in the world, not science, not logic, not even fear, could stop the miracle already forming. The desert shall bloom again, and even the fiercest hearts will cradle the smallest of cries. The 6th morning began like all the others, pale light slipping through clouded skylights, nurses treading softly past cages, volunteers murmuring tired hope. Dr. Hayes stood in the corridor outside Luna's enclosure, her coffee cold, her eyes fixed on the unmoving shape of the bobcat. She had come early, not for treatment, but out of something deeper. Grief was a long, slow burn, and Luna's flame had dimmed to embers. Down the hall, a volunteer bottle fed the Labrador puppies. Their cries, shrill and piercing, rose again. And this time, something shifted. Luna's ear flicked. Dr. Hayes didn't even breathe. Another cry, this one sharper, the smallest pup, letting out a yelp that cracked through the morning hush. Luna's shoulder twitched, her spine uncoiled. She lifted her head, slow, as if rising from the bottom of a river. Then she turned. Her eyes didn't meet Dr. Hayes. They locked on the door. Her ears stood tall, alert, listening, present. "Bring them closer," the doctor said. Her voice trembled, caught between desperation and disbelief. The staff hesitated. It was unthinkable. Luna was a predator. The puppies were blind, vulnerable. One swipe could end a life. But something deeper than fear moved them. A pull none could name, only follow. They brought the box of puppies down the hallway and stopped just outside Luna's enclosure. 4 trembling bodies squirmed in the warm folds of a towel. Luna stood. Her legs wobbled beneath her, thin and unfamiliar. She walked slowly, deliberately, toward the front of her cage. She pressed her nose low to the bars. The crying stopped. The air itself froze. One puppy sniffed the air, lifted its head blindly toward her scent. Luna didn't growl. Didn't hiss. She simply lowered herself to the ground and curled along the bars. Her flank met the cold metal, her breath evened. She closed her eyes. That was the moment no one dared speak. The air was thick with something holy, not science, not behavior. Something else. The kind of moment you don't document, you kneel beside. Luna had made her choice. Even the wild shall nurse the orphan, and from sorrow shall rise a bond that none shall break. No one slept that night. They sat outside her enclosure like monks around a shrine, watching. The image of the bobcat lying still beside a box of crying puppies became more than just improbable, it became sacred. She didn't leave the bars. She stayed curled, her body pressed as close as she could to the warmth on the other side. Every time a puppy cried, she lifted her head. Every whimper brought her closer. By morning, something in her posture had changed. She wasn't defeated, she was waiting. When Dr. Hayes approached at dawn, Luna was standing, ears perked, eyes steady. She wasn't a predator anymore, she was a mother. They felt it before anyone spoke it. A single volunteer, hands shaking, carried the smallest puppy toward her. Pale gold fur, still blind eyes, a belly bloated with formula, but a heart hollow with yearning. His cries echoed down the corridor, thin and lost. Luna was already at the gate. No hesitation, no flash of teeth, just presence. The puppy was placed. On a folded towel, inches from the bars, he cried again. Luna leaned forward. Her nose touched his fur. She sniffed long, deep, and then she licked him, once, twice, long, sweeping strokes of tongue across his back, maternal, instinctive. The puppy squeaked and squirmed closer. Luna extended a paw, not claws, not threat, and hooked the towel, pulling it gently, deliberately toward the bars. "She's pulling him in," someone whispered, the words barely more than prayer. The vet reached the enclosure. Slowly, with breath held like porcelain, she unlatched the gate and slid the puppy inside. Luna didn't pounce. She curled around him, her tail wrapped over his belly. Her body formed a shield, soft and warm. The puppy rooted, latched, and began to feed. And Luna purred. It wasn't loud, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. A sound born from a body that had once decided to die. A sound of rebirth. One by one, the other puppies were introduced. She accepted them all, cleaned them, nudged them gently, curled her body to protect them from a world she had once run from. It wasn't science. It was soul. It made no biological sense, but it made something better. Sense of the heart. Grief had become grace. Predator had become protector. And those 4 tiny pups had become hers, not by blood but by choice. A mother's heart is not limited by species, only by love. And hers had returned, fierce, full, and forever. What happened next became legend. The staff, once bound by protocol, began documenting what felt like divine intervention. The images swept the internet like wildfire. A wild bobcat, curled around Labrador pups, nursing them back from the edge of orphanhood. Hashtag animal rescue, hashtag emotional true story, hashtag animal miracle, hashtag human and animal connection. The hashtags carried their story across continents. From Arizona to Pakistan, across Europe, Asia, and beyond, millions watched the footage through tears. People whispered about the mystery of it. What stirred her? What did she hear in their cries that made her choose life again? But maybe it wasn't sound, maybe it was absence. The echo of her own cubs lost in the desert, calling from beyond, nudging her forward. Or maybe, just maybe, grief had found its mirror and turned into love. Luna nursed them for weeks. Her body healed alongside theirs. The puppies thrived. The team never forgot that moment, not because it defied nature, but because it revealed. Nature after all, is not just about survival. It is about connection. About how even in the wreckage of loss, love finds a way to rebuild, to reach, to cradle. Luna would never return to the wild, but she had found a new wilderness, one paved in blankets, hearts, and tiny barks in the dark. And those puppies? They would grow up never knowing just how miraculous their beginning had been. But the world would remember, because this was more than a story. It was a sacred reminder. When we let compassion lead, even the wildest among us become family. Even the wild shall lie down with the helpless, and love will bloom where logic ends. From that single moment, when Luna first curled her fragile, recovering body around the blind, mewling forms of orphaned Labrador puppies, the entire rhythm of the Wildlife Center transformed. The sterile hum of medical monitors faded into the background, replaced by the soft shuffle of paws, the muffled yips of newborn joy, and the quiet miracle of a wild heart learning to beat in sync with tiny ones not her own. Every few hours, the volunteers gently brought Luna her new family. 4 squirming bundles, still blind, still hungry, still seeking. Luna didn't just allow them near, she longed for them. Each time they returned, she stretched forward as if gathering lost parts of herself. She placed her body around them like living armor, cleaning their ears, their paws, their soft round bellies with delicate precision born of instinct. If they fussed or drifted too far, she nudged them back with her nose, firm but gentle. When they cried, she purred, low and resonant. a lullaby woven from grief and grace. The room became a sanctuary not of science but of soul. Vets and volunteers wept openly. There were no protocols for what they witnessed, no textbooks could explain. A wild bobcat choosing to mother domestic puppies with such instinctive devotion. One short video clip captured the world. Luna curled protectively around her makeshift litter, a paw draped across two sleeping pups, her eyes tracking the others with the hyper-awareness of a mother counting her children. The video, titled simply, "The Wild Mother," exploded online. Overnight, 4 million views poured in. By morning, the world was weeping with her. Comments flooded the feed. "I've never cried like this before. This changed how I see wildlife forever. She didn't just survive, she chose love." The Wildlife Center's inbox brimmed with donations, love letters, and adoption inquiries. Luna had become more than a rescue. She was now a beacon for grief, for healing, for the impossible truth that animal miracles are real, he binds. The broken hearts not with reason but with the rhythm of love. Realizing Luna needed more than a medical cage, the staff acted swiftly. They cleared a quiet room at the far end of the hall, no glass walls, no cold concrete. Just dim lighting. Soft textures, thick blankets, and silence broken only by breath and heartbeat. They called it her den. It wasn't a hospital room. It was a home. And in it, Luna lay curled day and night, her new family nestled at her belly, their tiny paws twitching against her ribs. She rarely left them, she only ate when they slept. She watched them the way a moon watches the tide, constant, tender, sovereign. It didn't matter that they weren't her species. It didn't matter that the world couldn't explain it. Luna hadn't replaced her cubs. She hadn't forgotten them. But in those fragile, helpless bodies, she'd found something. To protect again, something to live for. The puppies grew fast. Eyes blinked open, one by one, soft pools of blue drinking in light for the first time. Wobbly legs found their footing, tails wagged like reeds in wind, and tiny growls turned into joyful yips. Through it all, Luna never strayed. She no longer pressed herself to cold corners or flinched at footsteps. Her ribs softened with healthy weight, her coat regained its gold, and her fur gleamed like dawn over desert hills. But most of all, it was her eyes that changed, no longer hollow, but whole. They tracked every movement of her litter with fierce gentleness. If one puppy wandered, she brought him back. If another cried, she responded before the humans even noticed. She rarely slept deeply. Her body stayed attuned to every breath, every squeak, every tug at her tail. And when they climbed on her, chewing ears and toppling over her back, she endured it all with patience carved from love. One clip, caught by a volunteer at sunrise, showed all 4 puppies clumsily climbing onto Luna's back, treating her like their living jungle gym. She lay there, still, regal, enduring with quiet joy. That moment shattered the internet. 10 million views in 4 days, news crews showed up. Animal behaviorists debated what they were seeing. Donations poured in. Chewy contributed enough for an entire expansion of the center's nursery and enrichment wing. And when they asked what to name Luna's new sanctuary, the answer needed no debate. A hand-carved wooden sign now hangs above the room, Luna's den. Inside she rests with her pups, hearts beating in sync. Not just surviving, living, not just healing, giving life. And the wild shall cradle the weak, and in the cradle of the broken, new strength shall rise. Luna's bond with the puppies deepened beyond all logic. She hadn't merely adopted them, she had memorized them. Every sleepy cry. Every scent of every pup that snuggled against her belly. Her devotion didn't fade as they grew. Instead, it expanded like light pouring through a widening sky. And when more orphans arrived, fox kits, raccoon cubs, even a litter of abandoned kittens, the team faced the unthinkable. These fragile creatures needed more than care, they needed presence. The kind of presence Luna had mastered. So one day, with trembling hands, a volunteer brought a mewling kitten near Luna's den. They expected tension, a hiss, something primal. But Luna simply watched, her ears lifted. Her body stilled. The kitten cried again, a soft, broken sound, and Luna blinked slowly, her eyes calm. She did not react as a predator. She reacted as a mother. It was as if the door to her heart had never closed. Over the next weeks, the team began cautiously, rotating fragile orphans through supervised sessions in Luna's presence, always gentle, always slow. And every time Luna met them with silence, warmth, stillness, her body became a shield, her breath a lullaby. The wild predator had become a sanctuary. But grief, like love, leaves its own legacy. One night, that legacy was tested again. One of the original puppies, the smallest, the one Luna always watched with extra care, grew sick. A sudden fever. Rapid breaths, lethargy. The vet team moved fast for fluids, heating pads, tiny blankets. They laid him gently near Luna's resting spot, but Luna didn't wait. She stood, moved to him, lay down beside him, her side pressed to his. No one asked her to. No one dared stop her. She didn't eat, didn't sleep, barely blinked. All through the night she remained there, a living flame against the cold of sickness, as if her body alone might will his heart to keep beating. The room dimmed, the building hushed, and still she stayed. At dawn the fever broke. The pup stirred. He opened his eyes, unsteady, unsure, but he knew where to go. He crawled weakly forward, straight into her chest. Luna lowered her head and in a slow, reverent motion licked his nose, and in that simple act of love, the wild became holy. For the eyes of the wild still carry the love the world forgot, and in her silence, Luna taught us how to listen. She never asked to be thanked. She didn't need applause or understanding or even recognition. All she ever needed was to know they were safe, that they were alive, that the tiny bodies that had come to depend on her heartbeat like it was a home were still breathing. And with that single purpose, Luna became the heartbeat of the nursery itself. As spring deepened and days stretched warm and wide, the staff gently moved Luna and the puppies to a new space on the edge of the center grounds. A quiet outdoor enclosure blanketed in soft sand, shaded by tall cottonwoods that swayed in the desert wind. Above her, sky; beneath her paws, earth; around her, the sound of play. The little ones, now nearly 2 months old, tumbled in joyful chaos. They barked at butterflies, rolled over one another, and darted after shadows. Their legs were clumsy. Their tails wagged wildly. But Luna, always poised, always watchful, never let them out of her sight. Even with space to roam, she stayed close. Her body moved like an arc of protection around them, always listening, always counting. She knew their sounds by heart, and they knew her presence like warmth knows a flame. Then, one night, the peace shattered. It came without warning. A monsoon, storm raging, desert rain, slamming fists against the roof, wind howling through branches like ghosts returning, thunder that cracked open the sky with a voice older than mountains. Power blinked out, the lights died, cameras went black. The hallway outside Luna's enclosure fell into a breathless hush. Only the emergency generators kept the center alive. At 3 a.m., a lone security guard began his routine flashlight, slicing shadows. When he turned the corner toward Luna's space, he froze. A low, feral sound trembled through the air. Not a growl of fear, but of warning. He stepped forward slowly, and there, illuminated by a flickering flashlight beam, was a scene that would haunt his dreams in the most sacred way. The latch on Luna's gate had loosened, shaken loose by the storm's fury. The enclosure door stood ajar. Inside stood Luna, low to the ground, her golden body coiled tight, breath sharp and shallow. Her ears were flat, her eyes blazed like firelit amber. And in front of her, tucked behind her flank, 3 of her puppies trembled silently. But it wasn't Luna who caused the growl. Across the enclosure, just 6 feet away, a raccoon crouched, wild, cornered. Drawn by the scent of milk and movement, it had crept in through a vent knocked loose by the wind. Its eyes shimmered in the dark, its claws flexed, hunger pulsed from its body. But it had not counted on her. Luna didn't pounce. She didn't retreat. She simply stood, between danger and the defenseless, between wild and warmth, between hunger and innocence. The raccoon hesitated, uncertain in the face of something that radiated both stillness and power. Then it bolted, vanishing into the dark. The guard stepped in, breath shaking. Luna didn't look at him at first. Her eyes remained fixed on the exit. Then slowly, deliberately, she turned her head and locked eyes with him, calm, sharp, unflinching. And then, just as slowly, she lowered her body over the puppies, blanketing them with breath and fur. She did not sleep for the rest of the night, and when dawn broke and the storm passed, the truth was clear. Luna had already lost once. She would never lose again. Even the fiercest are tender when love has marked their hearts. The puppies grew, as children of love often do, into creatures of joy and strength. What began as 4 fragile bodies trembling in a cardboard box had now become a force of tumbling, tail-wagging vitality. Their legs grew long and steady, their eyes sparkled with curiosity. They chased dust motes in the sunbeams, wrestled each other into worn blankets, and always returned to her. Luna fed them, groomed them, disciplined them. She taught them boundaries, she taught them presence. And more than anything, she taught them love without condition. Not the kind written into instincts. The kind written into sacrifice, but time, even in the softest corners of the earth, continues forward. At 12 weeks, they were ready, vaccinated, socialized, strong. Each one matched with a home carefully chosen by the center. Families who had followed every step of their journey. People who knew they weren't just adopting puppies. They were adopting miracles. On the morning of their departure, Luna rested beneath her favorite tree in the open enclosure. The wind brushed through the branches like the softest goodbye. The staff approached slowly. One by one, the puppies were placed beside her. She didn't flinch. She leaned in and sniffed each one deep, slow inhales as if trying to memorize them from the inside out. A gentle pass over the ears. A soft nudge beneath the chin. She curled her body around them as she always had. There was no panic. No howling. No desperate grief this time, only peace, and when they were lifted and carried away toward the lives they were always meant for, she didn't cry, she didn't chase. She simply blinked, breathed, and turned her face toward the trees. Luna would not return to the wild. Too much had changed. The wild had not abandoned her, but neither had it waited. Trust had rooted itself too deeply into her world now, and to return her would be to lose her again. The center knew what her heart needed. They built her a permanent home, twice the size, with shaded dens, raised perches, the scent of pine on every breeze. And every spring, when the helpless arrive, abandoned foxes, orphaned kittens, motherless pups, they bring them to Luna. And every time, without fail, she makes the same choice. She pulls them close. Love doesn't ask if it's possible, it simply arrives, and it stays. Luna became more than a survivor. She became a guardian, a symbol, a quiet force whose presence stitched the broken pieces of life back together. She nuzzled warmth into animals who hadn't yet opened their eyes. She laid beside feverish pups who needed more than formula. She taught stillness to fidgeting kittens and shared her breath with whimpers that threatened to fade. She didn't ask to be this. She never chased it. She simply answered the call of pain with the only power she had left, love. The center began calling her their sacred heartbeat. Visitors brought flowers. Children drew pictures. The room she lived in became known as Luna's den, and no one entered without whispering. Because to enter Luna's space was to enter the presence of something holy. Every story here on Hope and For reminds us that real compassion isn't about fixing. It's about feeling. About stepping into the chaos of another's pain and offering not answers, but presence. Luna's journey began in silence, in grief, in blood on the side of a road. But she rose not with growls, not with teeth, but with gentleness, with mothering, with miracle after miracle stitched into her breath. She didn't choose her loss, but she chose her response. And in the end, she chose to give when she had nothing left to give. So when you share her story, you're not just spreading a tale of rescue. You're spreading hope. Hope that transcends instinct. Hope that says love doesn't care what shape it wears, because what Luna gave wasn't just survival, it was redemption. Join us at Hope and Fur, where every cry becomes a voice, and every voice becomes a reason to believe again.